Hey, we are here and we're going to cover the 5 things I wish I would have known about Abattoir of Zir. Now, it just came out and it is both a major win and I think a major loss simultaneously. And we'll get into that in a little bit, but let's jump right in. Number 1 was this is not a mechanic for everyone. Most people are not going to be able to, I think, even get the glyph, much less level that sucker to anything meaningful. Because kind of once you get the glyph, the next step is going to be level 50. And this is such a challenging mechanic that most people are going to find themselves getting very much one-shotted if they don't have some of the meta builds. And not even the meta builds, but the broken meta builds. The ones we know that are a little too good and are probably going to change next season. Those are the ones that are able to do okay. So what is going to happen to every other build? It's going to be rough. Most people that consume material are already a minority amongst the player base of Diablo 4. So someone coming to YouTube to watch a video to get better, you're a rarity. You're probably already doing better than most. So then the average person hasn't watched videos like this. They aren't watching things to make their build just right for Abattoir of Zir. And they are going to get creamed and they're going to find themselves running out of just really the resources to even play it, much less have a chance at beating it. So that takes us to number 2, a massive damage cliff between mobs and bosses. So when I did my first run, I'm like, man, this is it's a little hairy, but it's not crazy. I'm clearing the mobs. I feel good. I'm well ahead of the timer. I feel like, okay, this is on track. The bosses spawn and immediately dead. Immediately. I don't even know how it happened exactly. I was just dead the instant they showed up because you have a big risk factor. Not only do you do that whole part trying to rush against the clock, and then the bosses show up and whatever affixes they run with can be absolutely devastating to your build. And there's no way to know. It's completely blind. And so many times I would show up at the end with the bosses and all 3 of the suckers have suppressor. I'm a ball lightning sorceress. If you don't know, if I hit a waller, if I hit a suppressor bubble, if I hit those, my damage goes away. All those balls disappear. And if you're not doing damage, you are then not getting defense because most of the builds are running disobedience. So if I'm not hitting, I'm not protected. And so Big Cliff is a shocker and it was surprising. I was not prepared for it. And it seems to be very random, the fixes, because the next run I ran through and I cleared it very easily. But it was more often than not, I find myself in a place where it was a very tough battle and not in a fun, enjoyable way, but in a way, if you make any slight mistake or don't at all, you just happen to be in the wrong place, you're done. It's instant pop. You're just gone. And that's even in the lower levels. That's like 1 through 3. That's not, I didn't push to 10. I didn't enjoy it at a certain point and I just stopped. I was like, this is not worth it. So that brings us to number 3, which is probably my absolutely least favorite because it does something I really don't enjoy. But before I go into that, I do want to thank you guys. We just hit 1,000 subscribers and that means a ton. If you don't know, in the YouTube world, that means that we're monetized. For the first time, this channel actually makes money. Everything we've done up until this point was basically for free and we got no benefit for it. And not that I'm now loaded, but the $4 that I got was probably the most meaningful $4 that I've ever earned in my life. A lot of work went into it, and even better, we're building a community. And so I wanted to thank all of you guys that actually are a big reason this was all possible. And I can't wait to keep creating great content for you and keep growing this thing. Thank you guys so much. So what is number 3? Well, that is anything but Nightmare Dungeons. I did not know going into this that I would be running one of my least favorite mechanics in the entire Diablo 4 experience. I do not want to run anymore. I do not want to grind a bunch of these. So when you get the sigil powder after you beat an Abattoir of Zir, you can go make another sigil for Abattoir of Zir. Now, if you are struggling with it, the most difficult content in the game, and you're supposed to nail it every single time. You have to be perfect because the minute you don't, you lose a whole glyph possibility or sigil possibility. So if you are doing that, then you're going to run out of sigil powder and you will have to go back and get that powder somewhere. And that is Nightmare Dungeon. And not only one, multiple. You have to run 3 to 5 of these because of the random chance of drop for the sigils that you can then break down to get enough of the sigil dust that you can make the next lift to go try it again. And that's, if you're trying to keep on it and hope that you're, kind of pushing, you're like doing Nightmare Dungeon, then running to the Abattoir Zir as fast as you can, and then you get popped over something dumb, and then you're back doing Nightmare Dungeons. So mainly I'm doing Nightmare Dungeons just to be able to have a chance at it. And honestly, Nightmare Dungeons, if there was any other way to level a glyph, I'm okay with maybe taking my level to 100 through Nightmare Dungeons, but the fact that I had to then take all my glyphs from 15 to 21 after I was level 100, got no experience, and I keep doing it, I would rather run that really horrible thing in the campaign where you're following the dude with the camel, and he's like, oh no, the winds, and you go hide in place, and you wait a minute for him to say anything, then he says it, and then you wait another minute for him to say something else, and then you wander and do it again, and like 5-6 times. I'd rather do that than run another Nightmare Dungeons just to level glyphs. That brings us to the fourth thing I wish I would have known, and that is a massive requirement to get all of the armor. Not just some of the armor, all of the armor. You're basically giving up a ton of power to then stack on enough armor to basically survive the bosses at the end, to have a chance at whatever random shit is thrown at you in that they all have for fixes, that you have even a chance to do it. It still doesn't guarantee. Like, even when I started getting all my armor spec'd and put in place, I still felt like constant, like, stark terror that I could die with any single hit from them if the littlest thing happened. And I don't know about you, but I like having a challenge. I don't like thinking that I'm going to die all the time nonstop. Unless I've chosen to do that and I want to go play a Dark Souls game, then I would just go play that. This is not what this is supposed to be. The one-shot mechanics where you have no control over it is just so rough. And then taking all the rolls you have for like damage, for like attack speed, for increased damage, for damage for lightning, or whatever the heck you're running, and have to switch those to anything defensive. That's armor percentage. That is life increase. That is damage reduction. You have to take as many of those as you can and really ramp that up, even changing some of the aspects you have to get enough protection on you so that you can actually survive the bosses at the end. And in doing so, you massively slow down your ability to clear the mobs in the beginning of it. Now, I do like the fact that there's a little bit of balance between those two, but I don't like how much it slows you down just to have a shot, a chance at possibly, even at the lowest levels. Even if I just stay level 1, it's still a risk depending on what is rolled on those bosses. Now, the double jeopardy on this whole freaking thing is that not only did you totally nerf your build as far as damage is concerned to get that armor, you are now probably still getting popped, and you're still going to have to go run Nightmare Dungeons like we talked about, but now your build is designed for not for speed any longer, or not for a high amount of damage. It is now geared towards good defense. So yeah, you're surviving easily at T100 if that was ever challenging, but you're not doing enough damage to clear well. So it slows down all of your Nightmare Dungeon runs because most people aren't going to have the ability to do 2 sets of armor. They're not going to have enough to run a completely perfect set for endgame of what they've already been building and the perfect defensive thing they need for Abattoir of Zir. So they're left with these kind of partial builds where they don't have all the pieces, or they have to map aspects over the pieces they have. So they don't really have the choices of switching very easily between the two. Number 5, after all of this, everything I've said, the rewards don't equal the risk. And in 2 major ways. When you kill Duriel, you get 925s. So you get the max item power for everything that drops, including the chances at uniques and uber uniques. Guess what you get when you finish an Abattoir of Zir? You get the random roll somewhere between, it looks like 860 and 925, and rarely above 900. So you are playing the hardest material, the most difficult thing, and your reward for it is material, like items that you can almost guarantee you can't use, because most of them are still rolling at much lower levels, so you don't get solid ranges of those. At the very least, if we're fighting the hardest thing, if it's harder than Duriel, we should have 925s across the board, and we should have chances at least uniques, if not uber uniques. That would give us a chance as we're building to get pieces that would help us keep going, and it doesn't. That isn't the only way, because then the second thing that we're doing it for is that glyph. And once you get the glyph in 1, the next big reward for the glyph is to get to level 50. Level 50. Otherwise, you get these little marginal, like really small gains of like 0.2 or something to damage for its main power. But level 50 gives you the increased radius, so you get another range of nodes you can pump into it and get a massive spike in power. But right now, people have calculated somewhere in 300, like I think 350 hours, somewhere in that range. I've seen different calculations, but more than 300 hours to get to 50. How many people are going to do that? This event is running through almost to the end of this season, so like late January. But that's 300 hours of direct gameplay. That's nuts. I don't think many people are going to see that level 50. And if there is no real reward up until that, I think you're going to see a lot more people just quit I don't know what they'd have to bring it down to, but it had to be, like the estimate is that you can take a character from 0 to 100 in somewhere between 60 to 100 hours. Now, there's all kinds of ways to speed that up, but 60 to 100. So 3 times the amount of hours to get a glyph to one glyph to level 50, and to do what? To basically do more Abattoir of Zirs that are going to have then increasingly marginal gains after that. So why are we doing it? Now, this obviously sounds like I'm really frustrated with a lot of what's going on, and I am. But why am I so frustrated? Because even when there's been things that have really bothered me, I've always found a pretty good take on the game because I enjoy it. I think it's one of my favorite games. I've played other games during, since Diablo 4 released, and I keep finding myself coming back and wanting to do what's next in Diablo 4. Should I try a different class? Oh, what's coming up in the season? I'm still very excited about it. And the issue with the Abattoir of Zir is that I love the mechanic. I just hate the implementation. This is something that if we could see this come into the game instead of Nightmare Dungeons or something else we can do, even if Nightmare Dungeons can sit over there, I don't care. If there's another way to level a glyph, if they could just set some overlap where Abattoir of Zir would like maybe start at level 80 and maybe spike up and have a high range to keep going. But if it gave us a mechanic, even if we're less experienced or whatever else they had to do to make it like relevant to that level. But if people that had their build kind of together at 80 could at least start the process. Maybe they don't go much from the beginning one, but they could get that glyph and they could start leveling it a little bit at a time. I think that would add so much to the game and give us like just this little bit of overlap and range. And then you could still challenge those players to the ultimate ends of what's possible there. If they did that, because I like this. This is very much like Greater Rifts in Diablo 3, and I've run a ton of those. And I was always wondering, why am I totally okay with running endless rifts, but I hate running Nightmare Dungeons? What's so different about that? And it's exactly what we see here. In rifts, you run through against the clock, kill as much as you can to then take on a boss at the end. And that mechanic is fun. I'm not running around playing trash collector, picking up garbage off the ground, only to sort it out later. I'm just running through and killing, and running against the clock is a good challenge. It feels like a good pace to the thing. And as it keeps getting more difficult, it's that clock is enough to keep me excited and feeling like I'm really pushing myself. I'm not just dying from one shot. That's not the difficulty. It's that it's harder to kill the monsters. They have more life. So that clock is running and I don't quite have enough. And I'm racing against that as I scale. That feels really good. And so I'd love to see something like this actually make it into the game as a whole and be more incorporated and not just something for a few people at the end that are like the elite, the top 1% that it can actually run it. So that is, I think, why I'm so frustrated is that I actually love this mechanic. I think it's fun. I think it's enjoyable right up until the one shots and not seeing enough reward for all the time that we spend in it and forcing me to do Nightmare Dungeons. Please, that has to change. Now, if you know you're going to be running more of those, you can see my 5 things I wish I would have known after running hundreds, if not thousands of Nightmare Dungeons. That can help you guys get through it a lot faster.